Hey everybody, this is Guy with Just Bluefish Watch Reviews, and today we're checking out a watch that I've been wanting to do a video on for a really long time. And thanks to a generous viewer who was kind enough to send me his on loan, today is that day. So a big thanks to him for lending me the Tissot PRX. This version of the Tissot PRX Powermatic 80 has been on the market for a little while now, and as a casual observer, I kind of thought that this watch might be one of the best affordable everyday watches currently available. Now, why did I think that? Well, for starters, it comes in at a $650 retail price, so it's not incredibly expensive. Also, the styling is one of those types of watches that straddles the line between both a casual sporty timepiece and something a little bit more elegant. Finally, Tissot, being part of the Swatch Group brand, means that you're probably going to get a quality timepiece if it's anything like the other Swatch Group watches that I've experienced in the past. And that includes affordable watches from brands like Hamilton all the way up to higher-end luxury watches from brands like Omega and even beyond that. So after having had a week or so to get to know this watch a little bit, what is my takeaway? Well, I think that I was right, and I have to say that if you like the style and the sizing of this Tissot PRX, it's probably one of the best everyday watches that you can buy for under $1,000, and it's probably going to favorably compete with watches well above that price point as well, in my opinion. So what is it about this watch that makes it so good to me? Well, I guess let's start off with the basic specifications. It's 40 millimeters in diameter and just under 11 millimeters thick. Now, the lug-to-lug length and the bracelet width are kind of up for debate since it has an integrated design. But suffice to say that I think the size is going to be great for most people. Even for someone like me, a person who tends to prefer smaller watches, I think it wears really great. Thanks to the integrated bracelet design, I feel like it fits really well on my 6.5-inch wrist. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say that I think that it wears smaller than you might expect, because it really doesn't. It just wears right. And I don't feel like I have a huge watch in my wrist either, as well as not feeling like it's an undersized watch. It really is pretty much just right. Another big thing about this watch, and what makes it great for everyday wear, is that it does offer 100 meters of water resistance. That, and of course, we have a stainless steel case and bracelet, along with an anti-reflective sapphire crystal, which makes for a great option in terms of overall durability. It's a watch that you really don't have to worry about. Now, this watch runs the Powermatic 80 movement, and my experience with movements like this, which are high power reserve movements based on the ETA 2824, has been nothing but exceptional. When it comes to more affordable watches, I have to say that I much prefer the 2824 type movements and their derivatives than I do the equivalent Japanese movements that you find in brands like Seiko's watches. I think they're typically more accurate, and I find them to be more reliable. All that said, I will say that an 80-hour power reserve is probably overkill for me, but for the person that switches watches often and wants to have a nice rotation to go through every few days, I can see the appeal. But yeah, I can live with half that length of power reserve and I'd be just fine. The fit and finish on the case and the bracelet is, in my opinion, excellent, and I have no complaints with the quality of the brushed or polished surfaces. Now, the watch is mostly in a brushed finish with a high-polished bezel, some high-polished chamfered edges on the case, and perhaps a few other small details. But the nice thing is that the polishing is subtle and it's not overdone, keeping the overall presentation understated and versatile. So one negative that I have found is that I do kind of wish that the bracelet had a bit more adjustability built in, specifically on the clasp. The dual trigger and low profile clasp is super nice, don't get me wrong, but the only adjustability that you have on the watch is some half links. So it's going to be a bit of a dice roll as to whether you can find an absolutely perfect fit or not. Still, the quality is absolutely excellent. The blue waffle pattern dial is exceptional as well, and I really love the dark shade of blue that they chose for this one, and I really love the look of that textured pattern as well. Now, the handset and the hour markers, they're nicely finished and applied to the dial, and the whole presentation, it really is awesome. The only downside on the dial is that I'd have to say the lume is pretty mediocre. Now, honestly, that's not much of a negative for me personally. I'm not all that concerned with lume for the most part. But for anyone who cares about lume, keep your expectations low on this one, or you might be a little bit disappointed. Another nice feature for an EDC watch is having a date complication, and this one has a metal surrounded framed date at the 3 o'clock position, which I am really happy to have. Now, There is a certain appeal to having a watch with no date. I get that. It's got a cleaner design with a less cluttered dial. But I do tend to favor the utility of a date complication over no date watches if I have the option. So I guess the last thing to hit on here is the elephant in the room. I guess you could say that it looks a whole lot like an AP Royal Oak. Yeah, I guess so. Maybe a little bit. But the bezel on this one is dramatically different than the Royal Oak. And while it does have an integrated bracelet, the link design is also very much a departure from the AP. But sure, it does have a similar vibe. I have to agree. Now, is that a problem? No, that's not a problem for me, not at all. I guess only you could really answer that for yourself, but I take no issue with it having similarities to the Royal Oak, and it's probably one of the reasons why I actually like it so much. It's a somewhat familiar design, and it isn't necessarily a bad thing, in my opinion. So there you have it. That's the Tissot PRX Powermatic 80 in a nutshell. Mostly excellent, at a pretty good price, with just a few minor complaints like less than the best lume and a clasp and a bracelet that lacks a lot of micro adjustability. But still, it's a watch that I would highly recommend, and it's one that I'm super happy to have finally gotten a chance to do a video on. Now, let me know down in the comments, what do you think about this one? What do you think that I got right and wrong in terms of my take on this watch? I would really love to hear from you guys. Now, with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up for today and say bye now.